Hello, and welcome to my review of what I call the debut album by British singer-songwriter Imogen Heap. She did release an album called Details as a collaborative project with Guy Sigsworth when they were in this group called Frou Frou. There's some really nice songs on that album, but for all intents and purposes, I call Speak for Yourself Imogen's debut first album because it was her first album as a solo artist. And what's also remarkable is that she not only wrote but mixed and produced this album entirely by herself. So she obviously did not have a lot of support in going forward with this. This was a bold move for her and a really formulative record that I think not only impacted her career hugely, but also careers of a lot of other artists actually who draw inspiration from Imogen. And some that you might even be surprised to find out are actually very inspired by her because she is a little bit more of an indie sort of non-mainstream artist, even though she's been featured in a lot of mainstream films, TV shows, and some collaborations. So this album was released on the 18th of July, 2005. Now, I didn't actually listen to this album for the first time until about 2011, so I was definitely late to the Imogen Heap game. I heard her album Ellipse actually first, and I will review that album, but I wanted to start with her first record because I want to go through them in order. Now, the flagship song from this album, Hide and Seek, I had heard before I heard the rest of this album, but everything else I had not heard going into it. And boy, was I amazed and enthralled by this record. It is such a unique sound that no other artist can come to match. And I love that it has Imogen written all over it. This album is insular, it's domestic, it's reflective, but it's also angsty. There's a bit of a frenzy to this record. You can definitely tell that she's dealing with some dark stuff going through this album. And that doesn't let up in terms of, the rest of her career, although this album definitely has the most angst and sort of the most heightened sense of drama that I would say than her later albums, which maybe are a little bit more abstract and a little bit more removed from herself. Not to say that she's never not removed, not to say that she's not within those records, and I love all the stuff that she does, but this album feels so personal to her. And it definitely feels like it's her diary being put pen to paper, her expressing all of these things that she's experienced growing up and dealing with relationships. So coming into the first song, Headlock, this song opens up the album pretty strong. It's a louder sort of song than you might expect when you first listen to it. It starts out with those, I like to call the beeps and bloops of Imogen, which she is, she's an electronic wizard. We have to, hats off to Imogen. She won a Grammy for engineering, and she was the first female to ever do so in 2009 for her Ellipse album. And honestly, Speak for Yourself with the engineering is actually even more underrated. I think she should have won a Grammy for engineering for this album as well, because the the electronic production is just so smooth and you can see the influence that she's had on so many subsequent artists, especially in the sort of indie electronica sphere. And of course, the lyrics are the other keystone of all of Imogen's work. Her song lyrics are so painstakingly beautiful, but also so beautifully abstract that they really involve, their real poetry really involves deeper understanding and lyrical analysis. But I could read you lyrics and dissect them for days and days. I mean, there's just so much to say. Headlock, though, isn't my favorite song on the album by any means, but that's setting the bar still very high. I still believe that it's one of those strong songs. It's just not my favorite. There's not a song that's weak, in my opinion, on this record. The single that was released, it's not the lead single, but it's the second single that was released, Good Night and Go, is one of my favorite songs on this record. It has an adorably cute music video. The song has to deal with stalkers and also has to deal with sort of voyeurism of looking into another's lives and sort of wanting to find out. When you live by yourself all the time, you're so curious how someone else might live, and you might find yourself obsessing over that. I really was drawn to the sort of way that she describes that instance. There's almost a music box playfulness to the instrumentation of this song. There's some nice chimes going back in the background, giving it a lighter flair, but it also is dealing with dark subject matter underneath. It's an interesting juxtaposition of the two. Follow You Home, you've got your headphones on and you're dancing. Now, one thing I love about this song, and she does this beautifully on so many other songs, is the unexpected change in sound from one word to the next. So, when she transitions from the verse where she's singing, follow you home, you've got your headphones on, and when she sings dancing, the instrumentation suddenly shifts. The emphasis is put on that word, and she does this beautifully with all of her songs. Emphasis is placed due to instrumental shifts and also tonal shifts in production that emphasizes certain words over others in a song. So one line can carry a whole different array of instrumentation in the background, even though it's still the same sentence. So it like punctuates a lot of these songs so beautifully. The way she sings dancing suddenly sweeps you up in a completely different feel and aura to the rest of the verse that she was singing. And she does the same thing with when she says daydreaming bed scenes in the corner cafe. Corner cafe is emphasized, and suddenly a whole new sound is evoked by just the word itself. It really gives emphasis on the lyrics predominantly. It makes the lyrics so much more impactful and memorable in a song where sometimes lyrics can fall by the wayside, especially when you have strong melodies, which Imogen definitely does. She has amazing melodies that she crafts. However, her lyrics never fall by the wayside. They're always just as in your face. They're always something I still feel like I have to pay attention to because the music always points you to them. When she sings a corner cafe, she kind of evokes the sound of what a corner cafe would feel like. Just for that one time she says that word. She does this throughout the record on so many different songs and all of her songs in her career, and it is something that is very unique to Imogen, and I just had to elaborate on that with my review. It's one of the things I love the most about her because that means that lyrics will always be front and center, no matter how strong or catchy the melody might be or the whatever else is going on, because she definitely likes to layer stuff, though this is a little bit more minimal in production. There's some songs where there's more, but this album's not, so heavy-handed with that. Although there are some moments where she really does let loose. Nothing ever distracts you from the core meanings of these songs, even though they're somewhat abstract. The next track, Have You Got It In You, is actually one of the songs that spoke to me the most when I first listened to this record. It has the most sort of melancholic sound of the whole album. It's very second-guessing and doubting itself. It's speaking of that nagging self-doubt that you have going through life in thinking, are you strong enough to deal with this? Do you have what it takes to overcome your struggles and all these things that are happening to you in this life? It takes a lot to be always on form. Or maybe not. All the time I've got. In one of those days, safety first, don't push. What's the hurry? One nerve remaining, waiting on one look. Have you got it? Have you got it in you? She's, that fragility that we all have when we're vulnerable. Maybe we're opening ourselves up to a relationship that's really scary, or we're doing something that's very scary that allows us to be more vulnerable and open. And we're being so brave and courageous, but we think, can we do this? Is am I not brave enough? Am I not courageous enough? Is this gonna break me? We always have those self-doubts and worries about this. And so that anxiety comes through beautifully on this track. And it really reflects how I feel in the state of my head. I mean, it takes a lot to always be on form. Yeah, it takes a lot to always feel like you have it together. It's so difficult, yet we see other people and we think, or maybe not. Maybe it's not as hard as maybe I'm all in my head. Maybe I'm making too big a deal. It's that second guessing. Oh, maybe I'm wrong. Oh, I don't know. Oh, but this seems like there's all of this going back and forth. And Imogen's songwriting always kind of feels like two parts of her brain are kind of talking back at each other. She uses it as sort of the like self-therapy in a way because she has all these different viewpoints sometimes coming together and sort of yelling maybe at her. You can sense that she's putting herself in the center of a dialogue a lot of the time with these song lyrics. All right, Loose Ends picks up the energy. We definitely have a song that starts out with this catchy humming kind of electronic production in the background that sort of starts to gradually form a beat that she gradually goes on to. And then during the bridge, she just lets loose with somewhat of an electric guitar breakdown that feels so energizing. But it also feels like an expression of anger. The song is speaking about a relationship that's so difficult because the two aren't really sure if they're on the same wavelength. We're kissing without kissing. We've got it down to a fine art. Not now, not ever. No, it's never a good time. How will the good times ever roll along? Comparing photos that are no longer there, just wondering where it all went. It's complicated. This time I think it could be triangulated. It could be just what we need. So what you say, we give it up and walk away. Nothing to salvage anyway. So it's painting a bleak kind of picture of, well, if this falls apart, then it falls apart. And maybe it's for the best. We're not making enough of an effort here. And I'm starting to wonder if this is really worth it at all. So that sort of energy is starting to build in this song. There's tension that's rising. The next song, though, is the lead single off of this album, and it's the world famous song that I'm sure you have heard in some form or another, whether you're an Imogen Heap fan or not, Hide and Seek. This song was sampled heavily by a lot of different artists, most notably Jason Derulo in his 2009 song, What You Say. I've got to be honest, I actually heard that from the Jason Derulo song, before I actually heard the song Hide and Seek. I was one of those people. I really wish I wasn't, but again, in 2005, I was just not paying attention to a lot of music in general. I was just listening to soundtracks and whatever my parents were listening to. I was very sheltered, so I wouldn't have listened to Imogen until I started really exploring different kind of alternative artists. And Jason Derulo's song was on the radio. It just so happened to be close to the time when I actually finally listened to Hide and Seek. And I was like, oh, this song was pulled from that song. Oh my God. It's really interesting. Why? It's a little bit strange. Does it really fit? But it's an iconic thing, and it's only the latter half of the song that has a little bit more of a triumphant melody. This song sort of prizes itself in not really having a melody, and yet it does. This is not a song that's catchy. This is not a song that you can easily remember the melody to, and it is definitely an unpredictable song, lyrically and sonically. The lyrics are some of the most abstract I've ever seen in any sort of songwriting, and it definitely owes Imogen a ton of credit because of the amount of thought that went into crafting such beautifully haunting lyrics that paint the picture so vividly and yet at the same time so vaguely to keep you wondering and guessing at the mystery of it all. Now, on top of that, she sings these lyrics with a heavily auto-tuned voice. She uses a vocoder. I'm not sure how you say that, but she really, puts emphasis on kind of mechanicizing or roboticizing her sound and her voice, which is something that usually artists do kind of unironically as just sort of their pop music staple, maybe to hide that they're not actually that good of a singer. Well, Imogen is a good singer, but she applies this sort of in an ironic sort of way or in an artful way as a statement rather than as something to just cover up some kind of flaw. This vocoder needed to be used in this song, and it makes her voice that much more kind of uneasy, but also captivating at the same time. It makes it a signature sound kind of song that really is not necessarily for everyone. Some people may be put off by it, but I think it does draw a lot of people in because it makes her voice this like powerful, mysterious thing that, you can tell is heavily roboticized, but also feels so deeply personal. We wouldn't expect auto-tune on a song like this because it's very sparse, very minimal production, almost none, very minimal background instrumentation altogether. It is just a breathe in, breathe out, say what's on your mind, and sort of put it to some kind of melody song that is so calming and soothing. Where are we? What the hell is going on? The dust has only just begun to form. Crop circles in the carpet. Sinking, feeling. Hide and seek. Trains and sewing machines. All those years, they were here first. Oily marks appear on walls, where pleasure moments hung before, the takeover, the sweeping insensity of this still life. I mean, I remember just being awed by the sounds of these lyrics. They didn't make any sense to me, but I somehow was able to piece together a picture. It's sort of well known that this song is about loss and losing someone and reflecting on that, possibly a death or the end of a relationship. But beyond that, it sort of just exists in this liminal space where you would interpret your own meaning to it. One other thing I also will admit that she always uses sort of domestic scenes to paint a picture. Domestic ideas of a carpet or of wine in a kitchen, and she uses sounds of the kitchen as percussion. There's a real domesticity to this album, which I mentioned before, that really kind of makes you feel at home in the sound of it. It'll always feel homely and wholesome in that regard. This isn't an album or in music, and especially in her Lips album, she does this more. This album does go a little bit outside the home in some sounds, like songs like Daylight Robbery, which I'll get to in a second. But most of these songs, like the next song, Clear the Area, which is another favorite of mine, it has a really interesting, again, bell background that sort of feels a little bit Eastern influenced. But it starts out with this sort of painfully bittersweet piano intrude where it feels like the aftermath of a party, like you're hungover or confused. And the piano sort of does swell through the rest of the song and kind of comes in this very airy, sort of haunting sound in the background. Carries this sort of darker message of, knock, knock, are you alone? No one's out here and I was not followed. Party's over and you don't look so good. You'll find your way back down and I'll keep the area clear. When you find your way back down in one piece, then I'll just be waiting here, right here. So, I mean, I also interpret this as maybe her speaking to herself, like her parts of herself that are kind of confused and acting out and maybe getting really drunk and doing all this stuff. She's just saying, I'm going to leave this space open for you to come down gracefully and meet with me again, and we'll kind of heal ourselves together better. It could also speak to a relationship. I'll wait for you. I'll wait out your storm. Daylight Robbery is definitely a unique song and definitely a highlight on this record. I highly recommend because she does apply the vocoder a little bit in the background to sort of foam a pulsing guitar-driven beat that carries really strong. This song has such high octane energy that it was a little bit left field if you're listening to the rest of the album. But again, she keeps the tempo just so energetic and lively and interjects so many interesting lyrics to also, like I said, keep you interested. There's those beautiful piano sort of snippets in there that are just like so light and delicate, and then it pounds right back into that heavy chorus where she's just making vocal sound. Don't mind me just cruising by the girl with the balloon. Good, it looks like we're the only ones around. Caught on CCTV, heading towards the city, winking diamonds at me, arms stretched out now. Happiness and silhouettes revolving in the deep water indigo. It's high tide, pleasure moment, thinking big, thinking positive, and itching to get on with it. I mean, I just feel all of this drive and emotion, like, and inspiration from these lyrics. I don't know if I ever pieced them together to form any kind of narrative or story. I've never really done that. But this song feels to me like it's just about adrenaline and just about living your life for once and not caring so much about what others think and just being positive and just going for something, head on, being head first and fearless is just something that, Imogen sort of battles against throughout all her music, which is so much more introspective. This is the one kind of extroverted sort of moment of declaration on the album where it's like, F this, I'm just gonna live, I'm just gonna be crazy, I'm gonna have fun. The Walk, the next song, starts us out with this very interesting lyric, inside out, upside down, twisting beside myself. And that first lyric always captivated me and sort of made the rest of the song always imagine her as this like cocoon person hanging from the ceiling. But I interpret this song as because the lyrics are speaking about a relationship that could possibly become fruition. They're close friends, but they're not really sure where this is going. She's singing, oh, we could be something so much more. I have to walk to your house every day. You're as close as it gets without touching me. Like things are so close yet, but we're not quite there. And I'm starting to lose control. I'm starting to break down at this point. Like, this is getting too much for me. She even goes so deep into this metaphor of being like some sort of like sinking ship. No response on any level. Red alert. This vessel's under siege. Total overload. All systems down. They've got control. There's no way out. We are surrounded. Give in and relish every minute of it. I mean, again, it always flips it on its head. Things seem so deep and dark, but she's like, well, you know what? Live this, embody it. I feel a weakness coming on. This song it's just all over the place and sort of all these different emotions coagulating in such an interesting way and such a beautiful kind of frenzied sound. There's a frenziedness nature to this song and to a lot of the songs on this album. And there's pain, but there's also reconciliation. It goes back and forth. And like I said, there's emphasis on certain words and phrases by spacing out the music or stripping away the instrumentation for just like 5 or 6 bars or even just 1 bar and then coming right back in with the same beat. It varies it up. It keeps you on your toes. Just for Now is such a more sweet and innocent song. It kind of calms you down after the frenzied nature of the past 2 songs, and it evokes a dinner conversation at the holidays where you're feeling a little tipsy and you don't really like being with your relatives, and maybe your significant other's giving you the side eye and you're like, stop kicking me under the table. Maybe I just want to say things. Maybe I just want to drink. Maybe I just want to I hate being with my family in the holidays. I get that feeling. And when she sings Just for Now, it's sort of like, just for now, let's leave all our hopelessness aside. Let's try and come together and enjoy the holiday together, even though it's so difficult because so and so is like ranting on the about something that we don't want to hear about, and someone's always burning something in the kitchen because people can't cook. I hate the music they're playing. Can someone turn that off? And could this woman shut up, please? Can I have another drink? Pour me another. Don't wag your finger at me. Like, I'm doing what I can to appease you guys. I'm doing what I can to be a part of the holiday dinner situation, because I really don't want to be. It's a cheeky, kind of fun, witty song, and I appreciate it, kind of its levity. And then, of course, it ends with her just saying, "Get me out of here," like a ton. It echoes this sort of embodiment of I don't belong here. Like, I just want to get out. Like, I hate my family. It's kind of sad, but it just feels like frantic. Like, I just need to get out of this, over the top domesticity, to some extent. In some ways, it's her rebelling against sort of some of the, homebody aesthetics that she kind of places into a lot of the lyrics of her songs. Okay, so if you want a song that you can dance to at a party or something that feels just with a great beat, I Am in Love with You is your song. The beat and like the vibe of this song is just so sexy, but also very self-aware. But as it's again, it feels like someone who's had too much to drink and they're sort of saying all these things, and you're like, honey, what are you saying? Like, you need to calm down. You're saying you love me, and then you're saying you're not in love with me. Even she says, right now, another please. Obviously, another drink of alcohol. I'm going on a rant here. This sort of almost feels like sort of that after dinner conversation where she's gotten really drunk and she wants to let loose a bit and dance, and she's getting a little too personal in what she's revealing about herself. Don't get yourself in situations, darling, that you can't handle. Hey, we shouldn't have come here. We shouldn't have been put in this situation in the first place. You did this to me. You made me kind of feel crazy and want to get super drunk. And at the end, she does say, I'm not in love with you. Not anymore. But at the beginning, she's saying, I am in love with you, which makes it feel like, that I am in love with you part was not true. It's the end part that really carries the sentiment that is a little bit more harsh, even though, again, it's just such a fun dance song. I don't go too much into the lyrics beyond that because it just has a really fun groove. Closing In is not such a memorable song for me on this album. It might be my least favorite if I had to pick one, but I hate picking least favorites on albums that I do really love. It does have some very nice atmospheric sort of sound effects going on. The instrumentation is very diverse. I can't wait to be with you. No, I just can't sit still. Are we there yet? Takes me back. I remember such a magical place. It was so you. At the end of the night when the demons start to close in around you and you're starting to sober up a little bit and you're realizing, what did I just do? Am I going to be okay? Did I just push the love of my life away, or am I throwing myself into a relationship I don't belong in? She sings, I hope that you make it through. If she's also singing possibly to a lover that she's breaking up with, she sings, I know it's going to be hard for you, but I hope that you make it out of this. I hope that we make it out of this okay. This breakup's not easy for us. I do feel like it is just sort of the aftermath song. It's the sober recollection song, and it's the late night sort of worried thoughts in your head before you go to sleep. But the closing song definitely embodies the most drama and melancholy of the whole album and is sort of the most arresting because of it. The Moment I Said It paints a picture of the literal breakdown and abusive nature of some relationships. The moment I said it, the moment I opened my mouth, let in your eyelids, bulldoze the life out of me. Like, eyelids are so soft, they're bulldozing the life out of you. She's such an amazing poet. I mean, seriously, I would read a book of her poems because she knows how to illustrate a scene with vocabulary you wouldn't expect to hear, and to use just such enriching and thought-provoking imagery. It's really something that makes you ponder and admire. And then the rest of the song is sort of the frenzied discussion and the backtracking constantly between an argument between two lovers that is obviously forcing this relationship to completely disintegrate. Just put back the car keys or somebody's going to get hurt. The sound of the song gets a little bit more frantic as the direness of the situation, you know, gets the argument escalates and the stakes get raised. You know, suddenly they're outside, they're no longer inside. You know, when an argument goes outside, that things are getting pretty real. You know, someone's threatening to just drive away. You know, there is an element of, honey, come back. We'll work it out in the morning. You know, let's just go to sleep on this. We don't want to say things we don't mean. Don't stop what you're doing. You're scaring me. You know, suddenly he's getting too violent. The violence is inserted. And then she uses these onomatopoeias like smash, and she says it sounding like how it could feel or sound. She draws out that word, and then the production sort of echoes it back and forth. And suddenly everything sort of chaotically collapses. After she says, such a beautiful way, "You're scaring me to death." And that's the point where she realizes that this just can't work any longer. I'm losing you. Trust me on this one. We're never going to recuperate from this. I now know I have to walk away. I have to protect myself from you. And it's difficult for me. I don't want to do this. I wish it didn't have to be this way. But there's a bit of resolution with that sort of dissonance that comes out when the song kind of finally decrescendos and suddenly gets very sparse. And the song ends very sparsely with just these discordant notes going back and forth until there's just one light piano note to end the album, just so subtly and softly, promising that there will be light the next day, promising that she will move on from this, that there's things will not stay unresolved. And so that's how the album concludes, and it really does sort of paint the picture of full story. It feels like one large story. The moment I said it is definitely the most story-like, in that it literally follows this kind of journey, but Just for Now does that as well, and I Am in Love with You, The Walk. All of these things are portraying like different stages of this relationship, and with not just other people, but with herself as well, or with yourself. And so I highly recommend listening to this album. It's such a thought-provoking record. And, you know, it does bear a lot of credence for the fact that Imogen did just create this by herself. And she was able to write songs that could be so unapologetic because of that. You know, she didn't have to feel like she had to censor herself. She didn't have to feel like she had to please anyone else. Like, this album was made for her to exercise her demons and for her to get out these stories or things that have happened to her, or maybe not even happened to her, but she's like known as happened to a friend or someone close to her, and deal with them in a much better way. And yet still at the same time prove what an amazing song crafter she is. So for all of this, I mean, I highly recommend Speak for Yourself. It is a gem of an album. I love all of her 3 albums that she has released, and I will review Ellipse and Sparks coming forward in the next few months because I have a lot to say about those 2 records as well. And also, I love that Imogen has such an influence on like young pop stars like Ariana Grande, for example. Ariana Grande has covered Hide and Seek and Just for Now. And she's always cited Imogen as a huge inspiration, which does seem kind of avant-garde and strange, but it's actually the truth. And also, a big superstar, Taylor Swift, has actually collaborated with Imogen Heap on her album 1989. Imogen is the producer and provides backing vocals for her song Clean, and you can definitely hear Imogen's sound if you know Imogen's style and then listen to that song. So Imogen actually has a really huge impact, even though she sort of gets kind of passed under the radar, unfortunately, especially in the US, because she is from the UK and she's a little bit more well-known there. But I applaud her. She's innovative. She's always creative. She's a force to be reckoned with. And I always look forward to seeing where she comes up with next. So I hope you enjoyed this album. Let me know in the comments what you had to say and think about this record when you first heard it. And I hope to see you in my next review. Subscribe if you want to see more. I'm doing plenty of them now. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. Bye.